Hi, hello. Welcome to finally a new episode of the AI Guardrail podcast. I am your host, Rem, also known as Kuya Dev. And huge apologies for taking mini hiatus. So I didn't create any episode for I think more than 2, 3 months. And I did that because I had to focus on an application that I was building. This application or this app was something that I've had in mind for many years now. And with the help of AI, I was able to build it in a matter of half a year. Of course, I had to sacrifice my podcast, my Facebook page, and sleep. Lots of lost sleep just for me to be able to deliver the vision I had for that application. But before I go into what application I was actually building, I also want to share my thoughts on a topic that's quite related. So, just to give you a bit of context, a couple of weeks ago, more or less, there's an incident that happened in one of the communities I'm a member of. I'm not really active in that community, but I know the owner. So the community is on Facebook and it's called App Builders PH or App Builders Philippines. I'll link to that community on the description of this episode if you're interested in joining. That incident was sparked by the community owner himself. And again, as I told you earlier, I know personally who the owner is, and his name is Bryl, and he is a quite an accomplished software developer. And I think let's maybe we could call him a technopreneur now because I think he has built a few companies. If I'm correct, correct me if I'm wrong, Bryl. Okay, but so Bryl built this community to help enthusiasts to build their applications in public, software, products, whatever, right? Now, side projects. So it was supposed to be a venue for creativity in terms of technology, building applications, mostly mobile applications from what I'm seeing. So you could use AI because why not, right? Like I said a few minutes ago, I heavily leveraged AI to aid me in building my own application, right? So there's no problem with that. No, vibe coding is currently a thing now, especially for for side projects and pet projects. That's fine. And he himself, like I told you earlier, is building his own set of mobile apps, no, and even web apps. And I think one of those projects really took off. And that project is called Tarsi. So Tarsi is a personal budgeting application. So you could track your expenses, your income, the usual finance tracking app for personal budgeting. I don't use it. I admit I didn't download or try the application since I'm currently using an old mobile app, actually a whole application that I've been using for years now. So I don't think I'll transfer to another mobile app anytime soon. So he built this mobile application again called Tarsi, and during that process, he was sharing how he was doing it and the features that he's been having, the whole shebang, right? And he is posting these insights, and marketing on the community itself. Of course, on Tarsi's Facebook page, and I don't know if they have other social media presence, but Bryl was very open in sharing whatever he knew, whatever the development was with that application. And that's fine, right? That's very commendable. But yeah, a couple of weeks ago, Bryl posted, let's call it a rant, about their application or the reception of other people towards the mobile app that he built. People were reporting to Bryl that there are mobile apps that have been published on the app stores that allegedly copied Tarsi feature by feature. Like, it's almost one-to-one. I myself I can't really validate that. I don't have the time. There are other people who have already discussed or shared their opinion about it, and I don't think I'm going to be adding anything relevant or anything valuable to that conversation. So instead, I want to share my thoughts and, in terms of AI governance, and AI ethics. We now live in a world where building software is cheap, right? Not in terms of, monetary or funding, right? It's more of writing code is relatively cheaper than before. You could write tons of code using AI. Especially if you're the type of app builder or app developer who just relies on, few prompts to build your own application, let's just call a spade, a vibe coder. The allegation is that people have been vibe coding, and worse, using Vibe or using AI to actually copy Tarsi. And from what I understand, Tarsi itself is vibe coded. But you can correct me on that if that's a wrong statement. But I'm going to assume that there's a large part of vibe coding that happened into Tarsi. Okay, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but let's just assume it that way. Okay, just for the sake of this conversation. In the post of Bryl, when he posted that rant, he was saying that although he invites or he welcomes competition, he finds it offensive that people would, quote unquote, plagiarize his work. Which for me is understandable, because if you're building something and someone just copies your work with not much difference, like it's almost the same application, of course you would feel like someone is stealing your work. And it's a valid emotion or valid reaction to people who are doing that indiscriminately, or intently, with intention of copying someone else's work. I understand that. Before I proceed, I want to preface this by saying that I am not a legal professional, but this is more of how I interpret what the legalities are around AI and intellectual property, especially in terms of software. Especially recently, there were a few rulings, if I remember correctly, in terms of what really is copyrightable in terms of software. So, most especially if something is AI generated, if the code that you have in your repository to build that composes your software is mostly AI generated, it is highly likely that you cannot copyright it. No, legally speaking. Of course, that would depend on the territory, but in most major markets, that's the position. So unless you can prove that the majority of the code was written by a human and not by AI, you cannot copyright it, or you can't prevent people from copying that code. Now, how that actually translates in practice, I don't know, because again, I'm not a lawyer, but you need to keep that in mind. So, especially if you're in a huge corporation, it's very important to have a multidisciplinary AI governance team so that you could study how your company's intellectual property is being protected. So using AI to build an application, purely using AI without substantial human input and human changes is putting your business at risk, at huge risk. So it's going to be very important for organizations to actually take AI governance seriously, because these things will come into play. For example, if there's a disgruntled employee who just steals, no, quote unquote, steals the source code of your company and builds his own application and releases it in public under his own name, and he could argue that you don't have the IP ownership. So that's going to be tricky. Build your AI governance team, and consult with lawyers who know how AI intellectual property actually works. So, but I don't think people would have had access to the source code of Tarsi. No? I don't know. Maybe someone did, but it's highly unlikely. And come to think of it, right? Even before AI, there was Stack Overflow, and a lot of us, including myself, actually just copy code from Stack Overflow, and often we just use it as is because there's a lot of decent code out there that you can use in its original form. Software development is actually a unique profession in terms of being able to share, code with anyone in public. I think software development has the biggest open source culture among all other industries. It's kind of second nature for us to actually copy code from other applications. Of course, there's licenses there. Maybe you would need to attribute or add a license.md. I'm not saying it's ethical, okay? We'll get more into the ethics of software IP later. But yeah, that's the biggest, I think, theme in terms of software intellectual property in the age of AI. Code generated by AI may not be copyrightable. You may not be able to prevent people from copying your source code. But yeah, again, people won't probably have the access to Bryl's source code, so that's probably moot for this particular incident. But yeah, there's another aspect of software IP that's more abstract. especially here in a finance or personal finance tracker, I don't think there's anything novel, about it. Most personal finance apps share a lot of features, a lot of the same features across maybe most all of them. There's nothing there that you could actually patent, or maybe even copyright, maybe just the logo, the branding. But other than that, they all share the same features. In that sense, people will just be free to copy the features of another application. Because again, you can't really patent it. No one can patent accounting, right? Personal accounting. So that process is going to be similar across all these applications. There's no one stopping that, legally speaking. So especially in software markets, that's really saturated, like, personal finance apps. It's going to be hard to create a moat around your business or your application. There's going to be very little differentiation between applications. So it would often just go down into execution. So even if people would copy the features of your application, it would come down to who executes it better. I look at this like how franchises operate here in the Philippines. Like, if you're familiar with Chinese siomai, those dumplings, there's a lot of food carts and food franchises that were built around the lowly siomai. Not really sure, but I think the first food cart that was able to come up with that concept was Siomai House. Was it? Just correct me if I'm wrong, right? So they came up with that concept, and when that succeeded, other business people started copying the concept. There's no one that could stop other businesses from putting up the exact same business concept as the first Xiaomi food cart. No, it wasn't really something that you can patent. Can you patent Xiaomi, right? Can you prevent people from selling their own Xiaomi products or dumplings? You can't. So it's kind of similar with what happened or what's currently happening with the personal finance apps. You can't really prevent other people from building their own applications and even copying your features. The battle is on the execution. Who provides more value for each dollar that the user pays, right? Which application is faster? Which application is slicker? But again, that's going to be very hard to do in a saturated market. But not because it's legal to copy another person's app. It doesn't mean it's moral or it's ethical. I think in terms of ethics, that's what Bryl was actually appealing to. Not in the legal sense, because I don't think he could sue, right? And I agree to Bryl's point there. Like, you're free to copy actually, but don't do it, feature by feature. Just add some differentiation. Like, I think from what I read in the conversations, even the mascot, are kind of similar with Tarsi. It was funny, but it's going to be very, very annoying for the original creator, which is Bryl. Come on, guys. But yeah, I think that's the world we live in right now. Like the Shomai analogy, everyone can just build their own Shomai food cart with just one prompt. And anyone can just build a finance tracker with just one prompt. So the challenge nowadays is to create businesses and applications that will be hard to actually replicate. Or if it's easy to replicate, if it's something that if you can one shot with AI, you would need to find other ways you can build your moat. or your competitive advantage. I think Bryl's competitive advantage is that he has a much larger community that's now supporting the development of his application, Tarsi. And the support for Tarsi is huge that his followers even go out of their way to actually report other apps that they think is copying Tarsi. So yeah, that's a real competitive advantage. When people actually believe in you and the product that you're building. So that's very admirable. So yeah, it's a very complex issue. And it's going to happen more frequently with how, again, AI has made writing code very cheap. So yeah, that's my take on it. So it's your turn. How about you? How would you feel if someone copied your work? Do you think using vibe coding to copy other applications is ethical, moral? Is it fair? What do you think about IP regulation that classifies AI generated code as not copyrightable? Feel free to share your thoughts on the comment section. And of course, if you've enjoyed this episode, like and share to your friends and colleagues. And with that, I say goodbye. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the AI Guardrail podcast, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!